All right, welcome everybody to the September Hubbub webinar. I'm Kat Carter. I'll introduce myself properly, but just letting everybody in while we wait. The chat should be activated, so if while we're waiting for everybody to join, you want to just quickly say hello, where you're from, what your role is. If you've got any initial questions before we even start about challenge weeks, you can pop them into the chat. But we will get started in just a little bit. I hope everyone's enjoying the kind of extended summer we seem to be having. A nice kind of 24 degrees at the middle of September, which is very nice. So hopefully you're all enjoying that. It's nice and sunny here. Just give it a couple more minutes and then we'll get started. Thank you, Gordon, for being the first one to put something in the chat. Appreciate it. Oh, and all the way in South Africa. Amazing. All right, well, we'll let everybody else join, but we'll get started because I know time is precious. But we really appreciate you giving a little bit of your afternoon and your time to coming to our webinar. And even if you're watching this on demand afterwards, you're still giving up your time to watch something that we've put together for you. And hopefully it's valuable and you walk away today with a little bit more understanding about what challenge weeks are and how you can implement them at your institution. So before we get into all of that, we'll just do some quick introductions so you know who is speaking to you today. So if we've met before, my name is Kat, and if we haven't met before, my name is Kat, and I'm lead consultant here at Hubbub. My role is to work with our customers, whether that be on a crowdfunding campaign, a challenge week campaign, giving days, or all other areas of regular giving, whether that be telephone campaigns or looking at strategic outcomes. We like to work with our customers in a lot of different capacities to create holistic regular giving programs. And that really is my role and Heather's role. But from my background, I have been with the Hubbub team for about, I think, 8 years. And previous to that, I was at the University of Southampton, where I was their regular giving manager. And previous to that, in the US, in California, where I'm originally from, where I worked with youth clubs. So fundraising is my background, regular giving, individual giving is my background. And when I joined the team here at Hubbub, I was able to expand on that through working with all of the different customers that we get to work with and helping them to engage digital into their programs and now other forms of giving. So that's me. Heather?
Hi, so I won't do the same joke. I'm Heather, and as Kat explained, I have the wonderful opportunity to work with many of our customers on lots of different projects. I've been with Hubbub for almost a year now, and prior to that, I most recently was at Cheltenham Ladies College in fundraising. So I too have a direct kind of experience in fundraising within education. But I know it's really hard to believe, but I've been in fundraising for 20 years and have a lot of other wider experience too, working across independent schools, both in the UK and in the US. I spent 5 years in Seattle, where I also got a lot of experience working with the third sector and not-for-profits. So everything I'm able to talk about with our customers does come from a background of experience, and it's been a fantastic first year. So if I haven't met you yet, I really look forward to meeting you.
Yeah, And if you don't know much about Hubbub, this is a great time for us to just quickly tell you about what it is that Hubbub does. So we like to take the experience of those in our teams in the kind of regular giving space, looking at holistic ways to engage alumni and donors in giving to institutions. And we also have fundraising platforms that link into those kinds of programs so that we can have a full end-to-end experience from looking at the strategy, managing that project, and then also having a fundraising tool, a platform that allows you to convert donors at a higher rate than perhaps other platforms that might be out there. So we do things like giving days, challenge weeks, crowdfunding, telephone campaigns, and we like to put that all together and make sure that we're working with customers in a really holistic way. So that's a kind of elevator pitch about Hubbub. But we're here today to talk about challenge weeks. And we're going to talk about what they are and what they aren't, and how they're different from Giving Day and how they're different from crowdfunding. We're going to talk about how they can be utilized within your kind of wider fundraising and regular giving program. Different ways that institutions can use them, kind of looking more so at the kind of education space, but charities could use them too. And then we're going to finish with some practical tips about how you can make them a success, because it's really great to talk about things in theory, but if it is something that you're seriously considering doing, we like to make sure that those who are coming to webinars walk away with practical tips so that you can move forward with thinking about how you're going to implement something like this at your institution. And then we will leave time for Q&A at the end. So if you do have questions while we're going through our slides today, do pop the questions into the Q&A tab, and we will look out for them there. If you also put them in the chat, we'll try and make sure we look there for them as well. But send us in your questions. Every question's great. So we want you to ask away. But a little bit of background before we kind of get into challenge weeks and the wider kind of theory behind them. We're doing this webinar because one of our customers at the University of York ran a challenge week, and they've actually run two. So they ran one in 2022 for the first time, and then ran another one in 2023. If you saw that webinar or you came to the Case Europe conference that we recently just held in Manchester, you will have heard from Jessica and or Tom as they talked about their experience of running the York Challenge Week and the results that they've experienced so far. If you want to know a really specific rundown of their giving day, I would suggest going, of their challenge week. I would suggest watching that webinar, but just kind of as a really quick summary, they ran their 2022 and 2023 challenge weeks over either a 7 or a 9-day period. It was specifically focused on sport. We'll talk about the other ways that you could run challenge weeks that are not for sport, but they focused on sport because that's a very kind of engaging area for students at the institution. And this was a cultivation activity to encourage students to learn more about giving at the institution and to focus specifically on sport because it's an affinity area that a lot of their alumni have, a lot of their students have. And they wanted to try and just break out of some of the other fundraising they do and just do a focus campaign. York do a giving day. They also do crowdfunding, and they have quite a big regular giving program. And one of the reasons we wanted to do this webinar was so that we could help people to think about Challenge Week within what York has done, but also outside of what York has done, because sometimes people can look at something like the Challenge Week that York has done and think, well, they have a really big program and lots of staff. We can't do that, or it's not the right time for us to do that. And really what we want you to maybe think about today is about how you can take some of what York has done and adapt that to what might be right for your institution, either in what you fundraise for, how it fits into your program, how many staff you have, what resources you have, and where your program is at. For those programs who are smaller or just starting out, Challenge Week can actually be a really great cultivation activity. And we'll talk about that a little bit more later. But from a kind of results point of view, you can see here that I got my years wrong. 2023, they raised 30,000 pounds from just under 800 donors, many of which were new, 97% of which were new to the university. A lot of these, to be transparent, weren't alumni, their peers, their staff, their family members, their friends of the students who are doing those sports. So a different cohort. They did have some alumni, and it is an area that they're going to be looking to cultivate moving forward. But in 2024, they had 40,000 pounds and nearly double the number of donors, and 94% of those being non-donors to the institution. So they're still using this as an activation, cultivation, a little bit of retention happening in there, but they're very honest that Challenge Week has a specific place in their program. It's not about alumni acquisition. This is about planting the seed for what's possible in the future. And we'll talk about that a little bit more as we get into it. So what is a challenge week? So we just always want to make things clear so that people understand kind of what we're talking about. These may be familiar to you, but if they're not, we'll go through what the definitions are. So these can sometimes be confused with crowdfunding and giving days. So crowdfunding is normally clubs and societies fundraising for the things that they need within their institutional experience. And they're usually fundraising via family, friends, peers, and sometimes also alumni. And then giving days are the central institution fundraising for key priorities from alumni, parents, and other supporters. So with crowdfunding, it's student and staff led. They're doing the fundraising for the things that they want to fundraise for, trips, equipment, things to do with their student experience, very particular things. And then with giving days, it's central priorities, bursaries, general fundraising, bigger ticket items that are a part of a central fundraising strategy and led by the development team. And Challenge Week is kind of putting those two things together. So it is fundraising still for the clubs and societies. So it's not fundraising for central needs. It's fundraising for clubs and societies, but it is almost led by the development office and putting the efforts of the students and the development office together to create Challenge Week. And it kind of happens within a kind of defined period of time. And when we kind of look at this in another way, crowdfunding is year round. Giving Day happens in usually 36 hours, the extended day. And then Challenge Week is a week. And you can, just like you are with Giving Day, be a little bit fluid as to what week means. For York, it now means 9 days. And the reason they do that is that they get 2 weekends in. And I think it goes from like a kind of a Friday to a Monday. So they get 2 weekends in there to capitalize on the fundraising efforts within the community. But it's this combination of best practice from crowdfunding, best practice from Giving Day to come into what we call Challenge Week. And in terms of how Challenge Week fits into the donor life cycle, and as I said, for York, this isn't about alumni fundraising. This isn't going to be changing their program overnight, but it is an element that's helping them to cultivate donors for the future. So when you're thinking about your regular giving program or just your wider fundraising program, you maybe want to be thinking about what are the areas within your program that are helping to move donors through the life cycle of giving. And that starts with cultivation and thinking, and providing activities for students so that as a student, they can develop a deeper understanding of what giving means to their individual selves and the institution. And you're just planting that seed so that as a student, they see that giving is a part of the institution. It's something that the institution is proud of. It's something that is expected, but in a positive way, not in a kind of demanding way. But it's something that the institution does, and they're very aware of that, and it's very positive. They're not giving at this time, but they're involved in activities that may be challenge weeks, maybe crowdfunding, maybe giving days. And so they have that general awareness. And then once they graduate as an alumnus, they start making participatory gifts and starting to develop what their relationship is with the institution as a donor. And at this time, we're just looking to make sure that they participate. We're not looking for big gifts because they probably don't have the capacity to make big gifts, but we're just looking for the acquisition. And then as their relationship develops and we steward them well, they then start to develop a deeper relationship with the institution and their own relationship and giving more regularly to the institution. And then hopefully we take them through this donor life cycle and they start to upgrade and continue being stewarded and have a much more personal relationship and conversations about their individual impact and the relationship to the institution as a donor, and they start to give larger gifts. So we don't want to just say go run a giving week and people leave thinking, oh, this is going to transform my program, because it's just one element of many things that you could be doing to transform your program. There's no magic bullet with anything that we do within regular giving. It's a combination of all of these holistic things that make our regular giving program work and develop over time and cycle donors through their relationship with us. So to look at that another way, we have, the most common things that teams could do within their wider program to cultivate this donor life cycle. And so I've kind of put things into where they would fall based on that life cycle. So you have things like crowdfunding, challenge week, and giving day. In kind of early cultivation, expanding into acquisition and retention. And then you have things like giving day and telephone that are helping with acquisition, but then do reach into things like retention and pipeline development. And then things like leadership and major gifts, legacies, which are pipeline development. And the darker the color, the more effective those things are within those areas. So with, crowdfunding and challenge week, they're going to be most effective within the early cultivation of our students, of our staff. But as they go throughout their life cycle, then we can start to maybe acquire more donors through these means and maybe also retain them. But when we get into things like giving day, they're going to be strongest throughout the acquisition and retention. Telephone campaigns, we're moving a little bit away from acquiring donors through telephone campaigns, but looking more to retain donors and do some pipeline development through those activities, similar with direct mail. And then legacies, leadership, major gifts and legacies, they're all pipeline development. So just to give you an idea of where does this fit, what's its purpose, and how can we utilize something like a challenge week? So they can increase giving to areas other than central priorities that alumni and supporters have more affinity towards. And I'm going to get into that a little bit more in a second. They can establish a culture of giving, raising the profile of giving within internal staff and student audiences, and students learning more about what giving is and why it's important to their institution. And then it makes the ask when they do get it, when they have graduated, that much more understood. We know how much easier it is for our alumni to say yes to an ask when their warmth and understanding is high. And if we're not doing what we can to increase that warmth and understanding when they're a student, then we kind of have to start much later on in their process and later on in their relationship. And if we can push more of that forward into from the moment they step foot on our campus, whether they're 5 years old or they're 19 years old, we should be cultivating them from the very moment that they step foot on our campus. And they are perhaps a good alternative for institutions who maybe can't resource crowdfunding year round. but there is interest from the students to fundraise. So like we said, York does do a year-round crowdfunding program. They do have to have someone in the team to resource that. That is, largely Jessica's role, to resource crowdfunding challenge week and a little bit of giving day. But that might not be feasible for you at your institution. So you might want to do crowdfunding, not do it year round, and challenge week is a good go-between to allow you to still do that activity. And it could also be an alternative for those who are maybe not ready to run a giving day. And not ready can mean a multitude of things. It could mean that your data is not in a good place to start doing giving day. You don't have the staff on side that you would like to have available. You need the budget to do it, or your audience just isn't there yet. So doing something like a challenge week is going to cultivate the audience to warm them up to them where you would feel more comfortable running a giving day. So this challenge week idea is a nice kind of go-between where teams may be thinking they want to do something like crowdfunding in the future, or maybe they don't want to do crowdfunding. They don't want to do year-round crowdfunding, but they want to just set aside a week in the year where they can fundraise for sports and club societies and the things that are beyond academia, or those who are not quite ready to run a giving day, but want to run something to kind of cultivate and warm up their audience before they run into something like that. All right, so with the challenge week, you can focus on sports, arts, specific subject activities, so the kind of more kind of broader clubs and societies. And it's really anything that enhances the student experience and those kind of extracurricular activities. You could call it challenge week, you could call it celebration week, you could call it student societies week, or any more creative names that you can think of that I have not thought of. And I'm sure there's lots of creative ideas out there. But it's fundraising for things outside of scholarships and bursaries and those central priorities. And one of the reasons why it's important to highlight these areas is because they all add to the student experience. They are the reasons that students have a positive experience. Yes, they go to school or they go to university to get a great education, but so many of them also walk away with the things outside of their education that meant so much to them. And that could be playing sport. It could have been participating in arts or drama or music. It could have been the clubs or societies that they were in that led them into future careers. It could be the friends that they made that ended up being lifelong friends and or partners. And these additional kind of benefits of attending, not just university, but also schools, are really warm areas of the experience. And I don't really think that maybe we're focusing in on that as much as maybe we could. And I am going to talk a little bit about my experience in the US, so you may just have to indulge me. And I know the majority of people here are in the UK, and you're gonna be saying to your screen, oh, I don't want to hear about how the US is doing things and how we should do them like them, and da, 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 da. And I'm not really saying that, but I am. And I think it's relative, and I wouldn't do it if it wasn't. But I think that there is a little bit that we can learn from what is happening in the US in terms of fundraising for sport, and how we could maybe learn a little bit from that and bring it into what we do here at in the UK or other areas of the world, if you're joining us from outside of the UK. So we are sports nuts a little bit, in the US, but that's also true for here in the UK. You guys love football, you love rugby, there's plenty of other sports that you guys are nuts for. So it's not just a US UK thing, but in the US, there's a particular fanfare around collegiate US college sport. We love it. It's now made its way onto UK TV over here. The UK college football is now being broadcast on Sky. So you guys must love it too. It's not just us, but it raises a significant amount of money every year. And it's something that I think if we leaned into, we could also see perhaps some of that engagement with our alumni, and also non-alumni, but people who are fans of our sport and in the local area and see it feeding into other areas of sport in the UK. So we have something called the NCAA, and that's where a lot of our sports is focused around. But one of the reasons why I want to talk about the NCAA is because I think one of the things someone might be kind of thinking in the background is, oh, well, this happened overnight, or, it would take us forever to build something like that. And it didn't happen overnight, and it did take them a long time to build into this. So they did not start, US college sport did not start like this. It started in the upper northeast of the United States with Yale and Harvard doing an American football game and deciding they would play each other. And then someone thought, oh, we should maybe kind of formalize this. Maybe this could be a thing. And that happened all the way back in 1906. So it's been more than 100 years that this kind of concept has been has been developing, and no one from the beginning thought it'll be what it is today. There'll be thousands of people in stadiums. These stadiums will be bigger than some professional league stadiums. They will have more fans than some professional league teams. They just thought people are playing sports at college, and it actually started because American football was getting a really bad reputation for injuring people. So someone thought maybe we should do something about that and make it so that people aren't getting injured by playing American football, put some rules around it. There were people playing football that did not go to the institutions, and they were just there playing football. And so they, standardize it. And that's how it started. We just need to formalize this, make it safer. And it slowly developed into what it is today, which is a huge powerhouse of business. So it's not just people running around on a field. US college sports is big business. And US college sports is, billions of dollars. And it's not just the media and the TV rights that plays into it, but of the 18 billion, nearly 19 billion that the NCAA is taking every year. I just want to point out how much of it comes from donations. So you have 2.8 billion that's coming from donations and endowments that these NCAA schools, which is something like 1,200 schools in the US, are generating. It's big business. And if we're all thinking about, well, and especially in universities, perhaps at the moment, times are tough, student recruitment is difficult. How do we pivot? How do we change? And maybe there's an opportunity for us to be thinking about sport at our institutions, which we do have a lot of good sport happening at our institutions. And I will get to that in a second. But is there an opportunity for us to be leveraging sport in our institutions and encouraging those people who had an amazing time at our institution academically, but also enjoyed playing sport, still play sport, maybe got an opportunity to do it a little bit professionally because of the time that they had at our institutions, and we could be focusing on that. So I'm just going to continue down this path for a little bit, so you're just going to have to indulge me. But this can be really intimidating, this 18 billion, and you're like, no, that's the US, that's not possible here. So I wanted to give you something that was a little bit of a different example that is a little bit more attainable. And this is my institution in the US. So this is Cal State Fullerton. We are the Titans. And we do have a very big academic presence within the US university kind of institutions, but we also have a good sporting presence. And in their last giving day in 2023, no, earlier 2024 this year, they raised just over 704,000 from just over 2,700 donors. So that's not far off what some of us are raising in some of our giving days here. Maybe not the same number of donors, but remember they'll have a very big pool of donors to ask from. But that 704 is not too far off what some UK schools are fundraising, and even some UK HEs. So I think this is, you know, a comparative example. And I want to just show you all the different things that people can give to on Giving Day at this university. There's tons of choice. They really leaned into giving people lots of different choice, whether it's people giving to the greatest need, to their college, or to things like scholarships or clubs and society and student athletics. And so they raised 704,000, just over 2,700 donors, and scholarships raised 126,000 of that from 334 donors. Great. And then when I looked at what the Titan Athletics Fund raised, 154,000 from 808 donors. And I mean, I didn't know that that was the case when I went onto the website looking for, you know, I wonder what my institution raises, because I know that athletics is a big ask. I give to athletics when I give to Giving Day. I also give to scholarships. I also give to my college. But the fact that athletics raises more than scholarships from their regular giving pool of donor by, you know, a significant proportion of their donors who are participating tells me that donors have an affinity for athletics. They may not have even played athletics, but because we go to the games, we go to the basketball games, we go to the baseball games, it's something that maybe we played in a mural, where, you know, we're not part of the big team, but we can play it socially. It's a big part of our experience at the institution, and we remember that, and we want others to have that same experience. So, you know, we're all fundraising for scholarships, and that's great. We should absolutely be fundraising for scholarships. I'm not saying that we shouldn't be fundraising for scholarships. That's important. But what I'm suggesting is that we need to be thinking about the other ways in which our alumni and our supporters are, their experiences are tied to our institutions. And is it that it's academic and they had a great academic experience? Or is it also they studied music or got the opportunity to play music and to do something that they love within the areas of music, of clubs and societies, and about sports? So leaning into these other areas can really help to open up our donor pool. And it's these other areas as well that students get a lot of the skills that they need in life to develop into, you know, socially mobile individuals who are contributing to the world in wonderful ways that we can be very proud of as the institutions that they came from. So when they participate in sports or clubs and societies or music or drama, they get opportunities to learn and develop. They get a sense of belonging. They get professional environment. A lot of universities and schools will have very professional areas that their students can do cricket or rugby or rowing that don't exist anywhere else in the world, and they are world-leading facilities, and also mentorship from very professional coaches that are going to develop their skills and put them into the place where they want to be, to participate in those activities. Gives them a sense of competition. It is a distraction in a very positive way, and it also helps with their mental and physical health. So there's a whole raft of positive things that come from encouraging students to lean into these activities, and then also us leaning into them when we ask for our alumni to support us philanthropically. And outside of all the benefits that it gives the individuals, there are tons of benefits for the institutions. So by leaning into, you know, and I'm going to use sport as my continued example, you're able to increase student recruitment because you will have students choosing to go to your institution for academic reasons, but you may also now start to have students choosing to come to your institution because of the sports they can play and how they can leverage that part of their career. They still need to keep up with their academics and they still need to do that part of it, but they're able to participate in the sports and activities that they are passionate about, that they may have a very positive future in. And if you can embrace that and give them that opportunity, they will be forever grateful and thankful. It also increases income diversification. So when you look at the income streams that these institutions have in the US, there's a huge amount of money that is coming into the institution from the sports programs. It also helps to increase local community associations. So in Southern California, you are either a USC fan or a UCLA fan. You're not both. So we've not gone to those schools, but we're really passionate about being a part of one of those communities and being a fan of either American football team at those institutions. And those people will also be giving to those programs. They didn't go to those schools, but they are giving to those programs. And it also increases brand recognition. So you put up the University of Michigan's logo, people know that that's the University of Michigan. So it's not just about embracing sporting activities. There's a business reason, there's a commercial reason why leaning into sport is a good idea. So that's my little soapbox. I'll get off of it. But just one more thing. In the UK, in the 2024 Paris Olympics, 60% of the top UK athletes who competed in the Olympics attended university. So these are all, with the exception of a couple, UK universities. The number of medals that those athletes received who attended those universities, and they're not all Russell Group. Some of them are, but some of them aren't. Loughborough will be very obvious. But if you're a member of these institutions, look how many of your students are professional athletes doing amazing things and who will be very grateful that they had the opportunity to come to this institution, practice their sport, go to the Olympics, get a medal, or just participate. But they will also have the academic part in there as well, because unfortunately, not all Olympic athletes go on to have a very successful professional career. So they're going to need something else to be passionate about within their life and their career and what they do outside of that. And that can also be part of the experience that you are providing. But it's not just UK HE, it's also UK schools. So I think is it 33% of the Team GB squad in the 2024 Olympics came from private schools here in the UK. So with Plymouth, Millfield, and Somerset and Whitgift schools being some of the top schools where athletes came from. So this isn't, just something that's happening in the US. There are UK students, UK schools, UK AG that already have students who are doing great things within sport. And perhaps we could be leaning into that a little bit more. Because we want to give people choice. If Coca-Cola just said, here, have Coca-Cola, as they did for many years, they'd have customers. But when they branch out and they give people Diet Coke, which is my choice, I'm now a customer. And my partner, who likes to drink Coke Zero, is a customer. And people who don't really like soda, but like something fizzy, like Fanta. So we need to give people choice so that they have more of an opportunity to join us as donors, rather than just limiting them to just scholarships. And if it's just scholarships, and again, scholarships are great, but can we expand beyond what we're currently fundraising for? And can we use something like a challenge week to give people the opportunity to participate in that? Okay, now I'm really done. So Heather and I are going to talk a little bit about the practical ways that you could implement challenge weeks in your schools, in your universities, and then we will take some questions. So if you do want to ask a question, please put it in the Q&A tab or in the chat. Heather.
Awesome. Thank you very much. So I think I just want to reiterate a couple of things that Kat has shared with us there. And one of the most important things, I think, having worked in the school with myself and then worked with many of our school customers, is to remember and be really clear that we're not in any way, shape or form suggesting that in the school environment you completely copy and take the template from a university, whether that's in the UK or US, and that's what you should be doing. All we're doing here is giving you some of those ideas that will then be able to adapt if we work with you and make work within your organisation. Because even comparing, you can't compare one school with another school. You all have your own communities, your own strengths, your own interests. Some of you may have sport as a big part of your school. Others may not be so sporting. It might all be about the choirs and the music. So really just to say, with everything Kat said and that I'll talk to you about now, it's very much about just taking some of those ideas and things that you think might work within your community and then developing them out further to be a success. So one of the main things that I would say if you're looking to do a challenge week within your school is to really look at how you can involve your pupils. And pupils themselves, whether they are kind of 5 or 18, can very much be your ambassadors and do a lot of the communication work for you and a lot of influencing within their families and their friends and grandparents and the wider community as to why what they're doing and what you're doing is so important. And again, as Kat said right at the beginning, if you're educating your community right from the moment they join the school that there is this wonderful wide network around you that is there to support you and give back philanthropically or through volunteering and mentoring and support, and they're seeing the benefit of that. Once they then leave and you do start to ask them to consider giving to a challenge week or a giving day, you've already done a lot of that work in the time that they were at the school. Whereas I think we've all experienced historically people that have said, oh no, we can't include anyone in a direct mail until they've got their first job, or they've come out of university a couple of years later. And I think this is a great way, having a challenge week and doing something really engaged throughout the school community to really start embedding the culture of philanthropy with your pupils. I also know firsthand how hard it is sometimes to get something else into the calendar in a school. They've already kind of planned out the next 2 years with all the different activities and events. So rather than fight it, I really recommend looking at something that's already happening within the school that you can be a part of to build your challenge week around, and look at events that are already quite inclusive to your whole community. So sometimes there's things like, you know, a founder's day or activities week where there's no lessons and it's all just about social activities and things like that. There may not always be something already there, but if you do have something, look at how you can engage with your other colleagues to really kind of build on what's already there. I think it's really important as well to reiterate that things that you're fundraising for in a school, whilst it's different that you don't necessarily have all these big like rowing clubs and different societies, that anything that you're doing should be kind of over and above general kind of core fundraising projects. And it can be sport related, so it could be working with the pupils that might be looking to go on a rugby tour or a choir tour, or if they're looking to bring in special kind of facilities like a new forest school or something that's kind of over and above and a bit different that can get a lot of interest from parents and generate that kind of excitement from your pupils as well. So it's really worth thinking long and hard about what it is you're going to be fundraising for and how you're going to kind of share those stories and generate that excitement. And most of us within the school environment, again, are very lucky to have it may not always feel like you're lucky, but often you're lucky to have a parents association where a lot of what they do is focused on fundraising. And so if you're not already in that position, I strongly recommend you looking at ways that you can work collaboratively rather than it be the parent society are doing a disco and you're doing all of these other things. How can you engage them and work with you on activities and fundraising you do within your challenge week so that you can both meet your goals? Because as well as pupils being your kind of ambassadors and your influencers, any existing supporters and volunteers in the school obviously care about what you're doing and care about that community and have their own other channels. Again, you know, WhatsApp groups, I don't particularly like them, but they work really well in schools for parents to have that kind of offline conversation and encouragement and engagement to get people on board to come in and support something. So just look at ways that you can develop that relationship further. And often within the kind of challenge week focus, it's very much about pupils and parents and grandparents and the local community. But I really think in a school environment, there's a wonderful opportunity to further engage with your alumni. They absolutely love hearing about what is happening at school at the moment, and seeing images and things where they can relate to, you know, having sat in that hall or being taught by that teacher. So as far as possible, if you can kind of magically align all the stars, to have a project where you're bringing out some kind of nostalgia for your alumni, because you will want to share what you're doing with them, what you're raising money for, and why it's so important, encourage them to give. And if you can kind of pull on that nostalgia side of things, and then also potentially use a well-known, well-liked staff member in some of your communications, it can just make that connection from where they've moved on in their lives to where they came from and what's happening now. The last thing that I'm going to say for now is with anything that you do, I strongly recommend at the same time you're focusing on your fundraising plans. So whether that's for a telephone appeal or a giving day or a challenge week, whatever it is you might be doing, you also need to start thinking further after the event to look at what some of your stewardship plans might be, how you're going to look at demonstrating the impact from the gifts that you've received and how you're going to hope to retain and grow those donors, and not kind of get to the end of the event and go, oh, great, right, what should we do next? Already have it kind of set up there and in place. So yeah, there's some of the kind of things that I think that are really important in the school environment. And when Kat's finished, I'm very happy to take questions, or if anybody wants to book a call or something to talk schools, I'd love to talk with you. Thanks, Kat.
No problem. So just seeing the question from Gordon. And I just wondered, Gordon, if you could give us a little bit more context as to why the challenge weeks have been difficult in prep schools in your area. We don't want to make any assumptions about why they might be challenging for you. So better to ask the question of why are they challenging for you, to see if we can give you any more specific comments about things you might be able to try, and maybe some of the things that Heather said are useful, but some more context would be useful. And if anyone has any other questions, please do let us know. So I'm just going to move into talking about challenge weeks practically in higher ed, because it is a little bit different. So within the higher education space, you do have students that you can use more proactively because they're adults, and a little bit like herding cats. But you can use them to be more of your fundraisers than where in a school you are still the fundraiser. You're still doing the majority of the activities. You can certainly still use students and parents to do a little bit of asking, but the majority of the communications that you're going to be sending out about Challenge Week are going to be coming from the development office. But within higher education, the communications are going to be coming from your students primarily and the clubs and societies, and then you're going to be supplementing that with your communications centrally, similar to what you would do when you send out a newsletter or if you do Giving Day, but it's combining those two things together. So that's how it is slightly different. But within the higher education space, you may want to focus on sport, but it is not the only option. Your HE, you may be more arts based. So you might be the Royal Academy of Music. So you might want to focus on music because sport isn't a big thing. Or there may be other things that your institution is well known for and that your alumni have affinity for. So focus on that. Focus on what is good for you, and start small. So when York did their challenge week, they started with 10 sports clubs and they picked who they were. They didn't just say, hey, sports clubs. They went to certain sports clubs and said, we're going to do this. Are you interested? Would you participate? Got their buy-in. And then that allowed them in the next year to expand to beyond the 10 that they had in the first year. So start small, make it easy to manage, and then grow it from the first year and choose something that resonates with your audience. If you are an HE, you will have a student union. So we would really encourage you to go talk to the student union from the very beginning, tell them about the concept, show them what happened at the University of York, tell them that there's a platform that you have. Maybe you're going to be kind and pay for that platform. Maybe you want to ask the student union to go in on the cost of the platform or the activity. But you want to get your student union on side because those sports or clubs and societies, the students will be going to them as a first port of call for funding, advice, guidance, information. Coming, they won't perhaps know about the development office. It'll be a kind of third party that they're not really aware of. So if you can join forces with the student union and work with the student union reps to get to the students' clubs and societies, that will be an easier way in than perhaps trying to go directly to the clubs and societies themselves. But you do, once you have that introduction, you do want to create a relationship with the clubs and societies directly, because they're going to be really important and pivotal to the success of the challenge week, because they're going to be doing the majority of the communicating with their audiences. So the former, alumni that they still have contact with in email or social media, parents, friends, other family members, things like that. Other people who may be interested as supporters in what they do, you need to be engaged with the clubs and societies so that they can have the right advice and guidance about how to engage with their communities, which leads me on to my next point of giving students the tools that they need to succeed. If you're interested in how York worked with their students, how they herded their cats, I would encourage you to go watch their webinar where Jessica talks about how they resourced that, what tools they gave them, the tuition that they gave them, because that will be quite useful. From my experience when I was at Southampton, if we have students that wanted to crowdfund, we invited them in for a 30-minute meeting. They told us about what they wanted to fundraise for. We told them, tips about how to increase their success, how to tell their story well, how to craft their audience, how to set up a schedule, basically how to project manage a mini fundraising campaign, because these students are not fundraisers, they're students. So we need to give them the intel on how to fundraise well, because that's what we do well. So we need to give them the tools and tips to how to succeed. And then there should be an element of the challenge week where you are promoting challenge week to your central through your central comms. Probably not as frequent as you are with a Giving Day. With Giving Day, it's quite intense, and with challenge week, it's more relaxed. One email a day, just kind of promoting, but knowing that the clubs and societies are doing the majority of the promoting on their social media channels and through their email comms that they're sending out. And just like Heather said with schools, you want to make sure that you're stewarding these donors and you are retaining at least the alumni who give, or attempting to retain them. Again, when I was at Southampton and we had our crowdfunding projects, if an alum gave to a crowdfunding project and we had their phone number, we would include them in the next telephone campaign. We would tell them about the success of the crowdfunding project that they gave to, and then we would encourage them to give to our student experience fund. That was also match funding the projects that came through the crowdfunding. So they were in a way supporting students in the future through the kind of same means, but as a regular donor. So you do want to think about the stewardship and the retention of at least your alumni population, and if you are a school, also your parents, so that you can think about the recurring giving of these individuals where there is the opportunity to do that. One thing that I haven't put on here, but it has also left my brain at the same time. It went in and then went out. Maybe it'll come back. I don't know. But I had something else that I wanted to say, but it's gone. So we'll go to our questions and see if we can help Gordon with his question. If anybody else has any other questions, please do put them into the chat. Well, I've also just seen that Jessica is here. So if you have questions for Jessica, you put them in the chat. All right. So Gordon has said, giving days seem to be more successful, although we haven't yet tried a challenge week. I'm just thinking that a challenge week is better suited to universities, obviously, and high schools. And pupil involvement is more challenging. That's not untrue. So because you are at a school, the pupil involvement is not the same as it is in a university, where you are dealing with kind of adults and you're getting them to do more of the fundraising. So it's perhaps knowing that the pupil involvement is not going to be the same as it is within higher education, and you are, as a development team, taking on the majority of the work to do the challenge week. So for you, from a promotional sense, that's the word I was looking for, you are going to be promoting the challenge week in a very similar way to promoting Giving Day, and they are almost maybe a little bit the same from that perspective, but what you're fundraising for is different. So Giving Week or Giving Day is fundraising for central priority scholarships, bursaries, academic kind of needs, those kinds of things. But then you have Challenge Week that is about sports or extracurricular or those things beyond education, and you're splitting them out to focus particularly on the same things, to make the messaging very, very specific. You could combine them like my institution in the US does. They just do Giving Day and everything is in one pot. So it maybe depends a little bit on what would work for your audience, what works for your resources. But Gordon, you are right that it is challenging from the pupil side of it, perhaps, because you're not going to have the same opportunity to say to the higher education students to email all of their former alumni. Yeah. Heather, do you have anything to add?
No, I think that's all really fair, and I think it's about how you look at the ways that the pupils can be involved, because yeah, they don't have these big black books full of contacts and addresses and things, but they do have an amazing way of telling a story in a different way than you or I or anyone else can. So I think it's very much about spending the time in the most appropriate way with the age of your students to explain more about what you're doing and why you're doing it. So, you know, if you're doing a color run or something, like, yeah, you can have wonderful photos of the kids all running around, happy, smiling, covered in paint. But if you stop and ask one of them, however old they are, whatever is relevant to their age and their level of understanding, if you're able to get across to them why they're doing it and the benefits of the opportunities to raise the money and build up different opportunities for themselves and their friends, then that's where you can get the involvement more. So again, it will take a lot of work internally with other colleagues and those that are teaching them or looking after them in houses, etc. But it's that kind of transition, because between they're just doing something because it's fun and they've been told to, and then really understanding why they're doing it, and then that's the story that they can share with their parents and their family members and grandparents, etc., who, you know, find it very hard to turn a child down when they ask them to support them.
Yeah. Okay. Right. We are at the top of the hour. That went by really fast.
Yeah.
I just looked at the time and was like, oh, it's already been an hour. So if there are any final questions, please let us know. But if not, that's fine too. Or if you want to email Heather or I, you can find us on LinkedIn, or you can email us separately afterwards. In October, we have our next webinar. So Heather will be speaking to Katie Tyler, who is the philanthropy officer at Benedin School, who has taken their telephone campaign more in-house. And Heather had the pleasure of working with Katie to help her to do that. So our webinar in October is going to be about bringing certain elements of your telephone campaign in-house and the success that Benedin experienced through that. If you're watching this and you're a subscriber, you'll know that you'll get your invite in your email. But if you're watching this and not a subscriber, head to our website, go to the webinar section and sign up. What subscribing means is that we don't send you invites, and you don't have to, well, we do send you invites, but you're already registered. But you don't have to register for every webinar. You're just already registered. And then when there's a new webinar, we let you know. So very easy, very convenient. And if you would like to have a chat with myself or Heather, or find out more about what Hubbub does, maybe you're thinking about a giving day, a challenge week, want to revamp your online giving pages, telephone campaigns, all things regular giving, we'd love to hear from you. But thank you again so much for your time, for attending today's webinar. We hope that it was useful. And if, again, you're watching this on demand, really thank you for taking a bit of your time to watch our webinar. We'll see you in October. Bye.
Bye.